Fallout 4 is one of the most anticipated games of this year. People naturally have very grand expectations, and Fallout 4 is a great game, but this is not a game changer or the innovator that some people hope for. At its heart, it's still the similar Fallout experience, but that's not a bad thing. Familiar mechanics like VATS are still present, but have been tweaked slightly to either make them easier to use or less clunky. For example, playing the game like a typical first-person shooter without using VATS is completely viable now, though obviously it's not as smooth as most shooters, but definitely functional. Other mechanics have been added, like the settlement customization. It's amazing. I'm not a crafting man, but this had me hooked. It's probably the thing I spent the most time with. It's so easy to use, but there's depth there if you want it, and you don't have to do it at all if you don't want. It's a world brimming with things to see and do. Your time is rarely wasted. Even when you're walking from place to place, more than likely you'll stumble upon cool stuff. Though Fallout's world could do with a bit more variety. A large portion of the world is dead forests and bombed out buildings. I appreciate that's how the world would look, but Wasteland 2 I thought added some nice environments in a nuclear apocalyptic world. The lore and history behind it all is very interesting, and exploring the world is really immersive. This is also backed up by some awesome writing, world building, and really interesting main story. But there are some things that break the immersion really badly. The pop-in is very bad at points. Objects like bushes and lamps just appear in front of you. Graphics glitches and frame rate drops happen very often, despite the promise of a smooth 30 frames a second. And speaking of empty promises, the quote that there would be no loading times was absolute shit. There's tons of them and they are long. All these little things just pull you out of the experience. During conversations with characters, they do all sorts of weird things like walk in circles and clip into walls. And your character seems to know the names of characters he's never met. For example, you'll walk up to a character you've not interacted with yet. Let's say he's called Steve, and when you press A to talk to him, your character will say something like, "Hi Steve." And a companion at one point told me to fetch my dog to pick up a scent we were tailing, but he had never met the dog, nor had my character mentioned him. But with all that said, you do get pulled back in again quite quickly. NPCs all have their own schedules, giving off the impression that this world is lived in, even though the environments are samey, they are nicely detailed and look like what you would expect of an apocalypse. Obviously, wandering the world, you're going to get into fights, and lots of them. As I said, the gunplay is a lot stronger than before, but the enemy AI still needs a lot of work. They either run up to you and keep shooting until you kindly remove their heads from their shoulders, or plink away at you from behind cover with perfect accuracy, especially the grenade throws. I also found combat very clunky when you're fighting groups of melee-based enemies. You can have AI companions help you out in combat, but they are usually useless. They'll run out into open fire and just stand there, and occasionally shoot at an enemy taking a millimeter of health off. But despite all that, there is a lot of cool weapons and a nice variety of enemies to use them on. I like that you encounter very deadly enemies roaming the wasteland. It's not like most RPGs where the game's hardest enemies are in certain areas. It just feels more real this way. You'll be walking along some train tracks and then a mutated bear will come out and tear your throat out. It's definitely a game where you'll get your money's worth. There's hours of content on offer here, and with no level cap and a massive variety of ways to build your character and ways to approach your quests, each player will probably have a completely different experience to the other one. It's one you will compare experiences with your friends, but a fair few of them will be bugs and glitches.